If you're a Nebraska fan, what do you need from Dylan Raiola in 2025? Because last year was good. Made a bowl game, got to 7 wins in that bowl game, but now you go into year 3 of the Matt Rule era. And everyone that watches this show, anyone that knows anything about Matt Rule, is year 3 is the year that he gets after it. The best way you get after it, though, is by having a quarterback that gets after it for you. So we'll break that down right now. But if you're a Nebraska fan, one, a lot of y'all have subscribed to the channel already, so thank you for that. But if you haven't subscribed, no time like the present. Join the Nebraska faithful, a part of this community. We appreciate you in advance for getting that done for us. So when you talk about what you need from Dylan Raiola, I think you first have to understand what the expectations are if you're Nebraska. And from what I can gather, looking at this schedule, which we'll talk about here a little bit more in a matter of moments, if I'm Nebraska, I think it's about getting into the upper echelon group chat of the Big Ten. Now, notice I did not say you have to win the Big Ten. I did not say you have to win double-digit games. But just to be in the group chat with the Penn States and the Oregons and the Ohio States, potentially Michigan if they bounce back, how they have looked in previous years, that I think is what you're asking. So what does that look like from a win total? 9-ish wins? And it sounds kind of, not far-fetched, but it sounds a little bit more extreme to say for those that are just looking at Nebraska purely from an optics standpoint, and they think back to the snapshots of them losing one-score games previously. That's not this team anymore. That's not what Matt Rule's about. I don't think that's what Nebraska will be about here in 2025. To put a bow on this, Matt Rule, when you talk about what he's done at previous stops in year 3, this is the season where they compete for a conference title. Now, granted, Temple and Baylor were in different conferences, not the caliber of the Big Ten, but still, crazier things have happened. Indiana made the playoff last year, if you need more proof of that. But when I talk about Dylan Raiola, to get him into that territory for Nebraska, I need him to be the elevator. There's so much said about him and the number 15 and the mannerisms, and he gets compared to Pat Mahomes a lot. That's his guy. I'm here for that. I love that. But you know what Pat Mahomes does? Not to make this an NFL segment, he makes everyone around him better. We have seen Pat Mahomes now on multiple occasions just JanSport the Kansas City Chiefs with you and me at wide receiver all the way to the Super Bowl. So for Dylan Raiola, he's got better than you and me at wide receiver. Not to put any disrespect on our own names. I like the weapons they have for him in 2025. Dane Key was a massive get through the portal in my estimation. Ja'Cory Barney being able to go another year in the system in a college weight room and all those things, and to have the success he had last year and build upon that. I like the weapons a lot, but let's be real here. The best teams in college football, in the Big Ten specifically, they win because of their quarterback. And that's the next thing I need from him. I need him to be the reason why Nebraska has success. Last year, he's a true freshman. He gets thrown into college football. There's all this hype around him having to be the guy that brings Nebraska back to prominence and back to a bowl game. You won a bowl game last year. Check that box. But you look to 2025, you're not a cog in the machine. You're not a complement to the offense. I think for Nebraska to get to where I believe they want to go, it's about him taking that next step and being the catalyst for everything around him. Mobility is something you talk about with quarterbacks in college football. Nebraska, whether it's on the offensive line or whether it's on Raiola, 27 sacks last year on my guy. We can't have that be the world we're living in, whether that's throwing the football away, whether that's dialing it up differently for him, whether that's seeing it differently. I don't know what that looks like, but you talk about, being able to create with your legs. I think he can do that. I want to see more of that. I want to see the next level of that here from him in 2025. Going back to what I said, good teams win because of their quarterback. Not with their quarterback, not accounting for their quarterback. They win because of their quarterback. In the Big Ten last year, guess who the leaders were? You look at the top yards and touchdown passes in the conference. The teams that made the playoff. Will Howard, Drew Aller, you got Dylan Gabriel, Curtis Rourke. It's not a coincidence. That's the game we're playing right now. And that is the next step here for Dylan Raiola. So those are the things that I would point to. You talk about, what you're watching with your eyes on a college football Saturday, what you're seeing. To get a little bit philosophical here, if you've watched this show, one of the big pillars of belief we have for successful college football teams, your quarterback not just being your quarterback, but being the guy, I think is really what separates the good teams from the great teams. And I think that's what Dylan Raiola has in front of him, and I think that's the opportunity he has in front of him here, going from being the 1-year starter to a 2-year starter. I am not in the locker room in Lincoln, Nebraska, so I cannot speak to this authoritatively. But I would say it would be advantageous as Dylan Raiola progresses in his role as the quarterback at Nebraska to then progress even further as the leader for that team. Now, this is not me questioning his leadership. This is not me questioning what he is as a voice in that locker room. I'm just saying for him to take that upon himself to evolve even further and to be the steady hand when things get a little bit weird, when Nebraska has an off day, for him to be the one that rallies the troops and turns the tide. Like, that's what great teams, again, great quarterbacks do. So him taking that next step and being the guy, even more than he was his first year at Nebraska, something that I'm watching here pretty closely, and I think we'll be able to see the dividends of that on Saturdays, especially when you watch the TV broadcast. Because Dylan Raiola, I've no question in his juice or his confidence or his swagger. I think that's infectious, and I think him having another year under him will be something that, again, benefits Nebraska and benefits his teammates and ultimately should benefit you. Look at the wins and losses for the Huskers in 2025. Now, the reason why I'm optimistic about Raiola in 2025, a lot of people will be quick to jump in the comments section and say, this guy's pandering, bringing good Nebraska vibes just for the clicks and views or whatever. Like, y'all that watch this show, you know how we feel about Matt Rule, you know how we feel about Nebraska overall. But when it comes to the 2025 differences from 2024, I think there's a few things to point to. Like, being a first-year starter in college football is tough. It's even tougher to be a true freshman and do it in the Big Ten. Like, there were 8 teams last year in the conference that held teams to less than 20 points a game. Like, God bless the old Big 12. The old Big 12 has got a special place in my heart with Graham Harrell just dealing all over the yard when he was at Texas Tech. That's not the Big Ten. That's a very different ask of your true freshman quarterback to step in and get after it against those defenses. But I would also say, you look at how the guy finished the year. When they made the switch to Dana Holgorsen to be the offensive coordinator, Dylan Raiola, there's still some things to clean up and work on and improve upon, but he was essentially 70% completion for those last 4 games with Holgorsen calling the system. So if that's the small sample size here that I'm taking in 2025 with me, that gets me excited. Like, last year, what I'll say is it was kind of like the first movie of a series, and y'all know those first movies where it's going to be apparently call it a trilogy, or maybe it's one of those extremely long movie series like a Harry Potter or what have you. A lot of times that first movie, you're just setting a lot of things up. Like, you're just kind of getting a scene, you're getting a feel for the characters, you're getting a lot of information, a lot of table setting for what's going to happen the rest of the series. That to me was last year. Got a lot of information on who Dylan Raiola is, how he's wired, how they're going to look at Nebraska here in the future. But next season needs to be where we see some more action, see a little bit more of some plot development. And I think they're capable of doing that. So last year wasn't a bad movie. A lot to be excited about. I mentioned checking the box and winning a bowl game. That's huge. But 2025, a bowl game is not going to be good enough anymore. We just said it. I think it's about being in the discussion for the Big Ten championship. And I poked a little bit of fun at Indiana last year or earlier in this segment based on their schedule last year. And credit Kurt Snetti for getting them to the college football playoff. That's not something to joke about. But you look at Nebraska's schedule, man, it's lined up pretty nicely. There's a couple of things that you look up and down the schedule that jump out to you right away, and you kind of have to double take. But y'all, Nebraska, they have 4 true road games. 4. You are at Minnesota. You are at Maryland. You're at UCLA in November. In November in Los Angeles, it'll be probably, 70 degrees around kickoff time, depending on what time it is. I digress. And then you're at Penn State, the second to last game of the year. For that game, Dylan Raiola should essentially be, a junior at that point. Like, you play enough college football games, like at that point, you're not a second-year starter. You're going into your 3rd year as the guy for the second game, or second to last game. You pair that with what we mentioned about, the games that you're playing that aren't on the road. Let's start with this. You open at a neutral site game against Cincinnati. Guess the neutral site, though, y'all. Arrowhead, Kansas City. You can't make this up. You can't. That's a Dylan Raiola home game if we're going to keep it a buck. And then your games that you have at home are Michigan. It'll be Bryce Underwood. I'm assuming he's the quarterback for Michigan. His first start in the Big Ten. You get USC at home. No Oregon. No Ohio State on the schedule. I get it's February. I get we're filling in some blanks here that we don't yet have answers to. But there's a lot for me to look at. Nebraska year 3 under Matt Rule. Dylan Raiola year 2 as the starter. The improvement under Holgorsen. It's all coming together. So I need those things from Raiola. I need him to be the elevator of his teammates. I need him to be the reason why Nebraska's winning football games. I think you got to score more with what you lose on defense. And I think he's got to take that step into being the guy even more than he already was last year as a true freshman for the Cornhuskers. So get at us on here, man. Let us know what you think about Nebraska, your expectations for Raiola, expectations for year 3 under Matt Rule. I'm excited to watch it. I'm excited to see it. I'm sure you are as well. For Cato on the ones and twos, for myself, JD PicKell, we're going to keep this party rolling, and we will see y'all next time.